Ndugu mtazamaji, karibuni sana katika hiki kipindi chetu cha lishe ya familia. Tunajenga familia ya kiroho na kimwili, na familia inayosali pamoja bila shaka itaishi pamoja.
The family that prays together stays together. My name is Ahimbisimu Helime, Semian of the congregation of Holy Cross. Today I would like to share with you about the family of Nazareth, a model for Christian families. When I talk about the family of Nazareth, I mean Jesus, Mary and Joseph. And today I'm sharing about the things that families can copy, can emulate as good examples for the well-being of their families. The first example that families should emulate is prayer. We see the family of Nazareth as a prayerful family, a family that always prayed before everything, the family that always fulfilled religious obligations. An example is the presentation of Jesus Christ in the temple, where Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, takes Jesus in the temple to present him to the Father so that he can be purified, and for also her own sanctification. This is an example of a good prayer that we ought to emulate. And also, we also see Mary singing the Magnificat, a prayer of thanksgiving, as we read in Luke chapter 1, verse 47-55, where Mary says that my soul glorifies the Lord, my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. She is giving thanks for what God has done in her life. And this is what the family members always ought to do, to thank God for what they have received, and always present everything before Him so that He can be their guide, so that He can be the source of everything. And also, parents, you also have the obligation to ensure that you teach your children how to pray. Another example is the love and care that exhibited in the family of Nazareth. We see different occasions where the parents of Jesus were showing a lot of love and care to their child Jesus. And an example is the standing by the cross, where Mary stands at the foot of the cross, seeing whatever was happening on her son, as we read in John chapter 19, verse 25-27, and also the flight to Egypt, which is found in Matthew chapter 2, verse 13-15, where Joseph gets a dream that Herod, the king, wants to kill their child Jesus, and Joseph takes the initiative to take Mary and Jesus so that the child can be saved, so that the child can be protected. So this is the same way parents ought to do, to always ensure that their children are protected, to ensure that you do all what it means for the safety of your children. Also, you need to ensure that your child is in a good position. When your child is lost, you have to look for that child. An example is the finding of Jesus in the temple, which is found in Luke chapter 2, verse 21, verse 41-52, where Mary and Joseph brothers to look for their child after the child had missed. And this is the same way that parents ought to do. Another good example that the families ought to learn from the family of Nazareth is the faith and obedience. We see the family of Nazareth having strong faith in God and also obeying the will of God. As we read in Luke chapter 1, verse 38, Mary says, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be done to me according to your word." And this is after the angel had announced her about the birth of Jesus Christ. She trusted in God and she accepted the will of God to be done in her. Also in Matthew chapter 1, verse 18-22, we see Joseph listening to the voice of the angel when he wanted to divorce Mary after finding that she was pregnant, and because the angel comes to him and he listens out of his faith, he accepts to take Mary. So as families, you ought to have strong faith in God, knowing that God who has called you to live together is the same God that sustains you, is the same God that will solve everything that you'll be passing through, is the same God that will provide for you whatever you need in your families. Another good example that we ought to learn from this is the respect that the parents had for their child Jesus. They respected him and they never distracted him from fulfilling the will of his Father. So they always accompanied him. They are always with him to ensure that he fulfills what God the Father had called him to do. It is the same way that you parents are challenged to always accompany your children, to always be with them, to ensure that you give them the best ways, the best virtues that can aid them in marriage and that can also aid them in religious life. As we read in Luke chapter 23 verse 27 to 31, we see Mary meeting Jesus as he goes to Calvary. So Mary was always with Jesus. Even when we read the Gospel of John chapter 2, at the wedding at Canaan, we see that Mary was always with Jesus Christ, was always accompanying her son. It is the same way that parents are supposed to accompany their children so that they can be able to be better children, they can grow better in faith, better in different virtues, so that at the end they can make better families, that at the end they can become better religious, because we know that if you don't model your children very well, they may not become better religious, they may not become better citizens of the society, of the world that we need. Also, another thing that we ought to learn from this is also the holiness, the genuineness, the understanding and accepting each other that existed in this family. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus accepted each other, they loved each other, and they lived a holy life pleasing to God. And it's because of this they were able to live in peace and harmony. They were able to live in better relationships. So as families, please try to look at these three persons as the model for your families, so that you can make better Christian families where children will also grow as better citizens, as better Christians, so that all in all, you can strive for holiness as you fulfill your vocation in marriage, so that you can fulfill your responsibility of taking care of your children. A world at prayer is a world at peace.